The night my partner stood at a podium in front of 400 people and accepted an award for Most Innovative Startup of the Year, I was sitting in my car in the parking garage 2 blocks away, engine off, watching the live stream on my phone. The suit I'd planned to wear was still hanging in my closet at home. I hadn't been invited. Let me back up. My name's Maya. 3 years ago, I was 28 years old, sleeping 5 hours a night, and writing code in a 1-bedroom apartment in Austin, Texas, with a space heater pointed directly at my feet because I couldn't afford to run the central heat all winter. I was building something I genuinely believed in, a platform called ClearPath, an AI-assisted financial planning tool designed specifically for first-generation Americans who had never had a financial advisor, never had a parent sit them down and explain compound interest, never had anyone in their corner when it came to money. People like me. My father came here from the Philippines when he was 22. He worked 30 years in logistics, sent money home every month, and retired with almost nothing because nobody ever taught him how a 401k worked. He didn't know what index funds were until he was 61. By then it was too late to matter much. I built ClearPath for him. For every version of him. My co-founder Daniel came into the picture about 8 months after I started. We'd met through a mutual friend at a networking event in downtown Austin. He was charming, well-connected, and had an MBA from UT. He knew how to talk to investors in a way I didn't. I was an engineer. I could build anything. I just couldn't walk into a room of venture capitalists and make them feel like they were the smartest people there. Daniel could, so we partnered up. I owned the IP. That was the agreement, written and signed. I had built ClearPath before Daniel ever entered the picture. The code base was mine. The patent filings were in my name. And we both understood that. In exchange, Daniel handled fundraising, investor relations, and business development. We split equity 60-40, me majority. It seemed fair. It felt fair. For about a year it was. We raised a seed round of $1.4 million. Then a Series A of $9 million. ClearPath grew fast than either of us expected. We went from 12 users to 40,000 in 14 months. The algorithm I'd built was genuinely good. It gave personalized, plain English financial guidance in Spanish, Tagalog, Vietnamese, Haitian Creole, and 8 other languages. It met people where they were, and people responded to it. Somewhere in there, something shifted with Daniel. I couldn't point to the exact moment. It happened the way those things always happen, gradually, and then all at once. He started introducing himself at events as the founder of ClearPath, singular. I noticed it the first time and told myself it was just a slip. The second time I mentioned it to him, he laughed it off, said it was easier than explaining a co-founder's situation to a room full of people who had short attention spans. I let it go. He started copying me on fewer emails. Started scheduling investor calls I didn't know about until after. Started making product decisions without looping me in. Changing the UI, pivoting certain features, agreeing to integration partnerships that affected the core algorithm I'd written. One morning I came into the office and found out he'd hired a new CTO. I didn't know we were hiring a CTO. When I asked him about it, he said the board felt we needed more experienced technical leadership as we scaled. I sat with that for a long time. Experienced technical leadership. I had a computer science degree from UT Dallas, 4 years of experience at a fintech company in Chicago before this, and I had personally written every line of the original ClearPath algorithm. But sure, we needed more experienced technical leadership. The new CTO's name was Ryan. He was 37, had been at 2 other startups, and within 2 weeks of arriving, he started referring to the ClearPath algorithm as our proprietary system in meetings, as if he'd had anything to do with it. I started keeping records around that time. I don't know exactly what made me do it, some quiet instinct I didn't fully understand yet. I started saving emails, screenshotting conversations, logging meeting notes with timestamps. I kept a folder on a personal hard drive that I kept at home, not on any company server. 6 months later, Daniel sat me down in the conference room with the view of the Austin skyline that I'd always loved, and told me the board had voted to restructure my role. I was being moved from CTO, a title they'd given Ryan, to Chief Innovation Advisor. No direct reports, no seat on the executive team, a title that sounded important and meant nothing. My equity was also being restructured. There had apparently been a dilution clause in the last funding round documents that I hadn't fully understood when I signed them. My 60% had become 31. Daniel's 40 had become 38. The remaining 31 was distributed among board members and new investors. I called my attorney that night. She told me what I already suspected. The dilution was legal, barely, and fighting it would be expensive with uncertain outcomes. But she also asked me something I hadn't thought about yet. "Maya," she said, "does the company have a valid license to use your original IP?" I went quiet. I had filed the patent for the ClearPath algorithm before the company was officially incorporated. The patent was in my name, Maya Reyes, not ClearPath Technologies LLC. I had licensed the technology to the company as part of our founding agreement, but that license had terms, specific terms. One of them was that it was contingent on my maintaining a meaningful operational role with the company. My attorney said if they've effectively removed you from operations, that clause may give you grounds to argue the license is void. I didn't say anything for a while. I knew what that meant. Without a valid license to my algorithm, ClearPath Technologies didn't have a product. They had an app shell and a team of people. The thing that made it work. The engine, the language models I'd trained, the financial logic I'd spent 3 years building and refining, lived in code that was, technically and legally, still mine. I told my attorney I needed to think. I told her to look into it further. And then I went home and I sat in my kitchen and I thought about my father and I thought about the 40,000 people using ClearPath to understand their finances for the first time, and I cried for about an hour. Then I stopped crying and I started thinking clearly. There's a question I've gotten since all of this became public, and I want to address it directly because I've seen it in enough comments and DMs to know it deserves an honest answer. Why did I wait? Why didn't I fight back sooner? Here's the truth. I didn't leave because I still believed in what we were building. The product was real. The impact was real. Every week I got emails from users, a woman in Miami who finally understood her student loans, a man in Houston who'd been afraid to open a retirement account for 15 years, and now had one. And those emails meant everything to me. I kept thinking if I just worked harder, communicated better, found the right moment to have the right conversation with Daniel, I could fix it. I kept thinking there was a version of this where I didn't have to blow it all up. There wasn't. I understood that fully about 4 months before the Austin Innovation Awards. I had been almost entirely cut out of product decisions by then. Ryan was running the engineering team. My Chief Innovation Advisor title came with a private office I rarely used and calendar invites to meetings where my presence clearly made Daniel uncomfortable. I had become, in the most literal sense, a ghost in the house I built. And then I found out about the acquisition offer. I found out by accident. Daniel had accidentally CC'd me on an email thread he meant to forward internally. A private equity firm based in San Francisco had made a preliminary offer to acquire ClearPath Technologies for $340 million. I read that email 3 times. Then I forwarded it to my attorney. She called me within the hour. Under a potential acquisition, my 31% equity would translate to roughly $105 million on paper. But only if the license to my IP was clean and uncontested. If there was a question about whether the company had a valid license at all, the acquisition would fall apart. We filed the formal notice to the board the following week. My attorney sent a letter stating that based on the material change to my operational role, I was asserting that the IP license agreement was potentially in default, and that I was requesting a meeting to discuss remediation. Daniel called me personally. The conversation lasted 11 minutes and I recorded all of it. Texas is a one-party consent state. He told me I was being vindictive. He told me I was going to destroy something real and good because of my ego. He told me the users would suffer. He used those people, my people, the ones I had built this for, as leverage to try to get me to back down. I told him I'd have my attorney follow up. The board meeting they scheduled was the worst 2 hours of my professional life. There were 7 people in that room, and I knew most of them. I had pitched to some of them. I had answered their technical due diligence questions at 2 in the morning via email. and now they sat across from me with the careful, neutral expressions of people who had already made up their minds. And Daniel sat at the head of the table and presented a counter-argument that boiled down to, Maya is emotional, Maya is difficult, Maya is a liability. He didn't say those words. He didn't have to. They offered me a buyout, a clean exit, $4.2 million for a full IP transfer and a non-disclosure agreement. The offer was structured to sound generous. It was not generous. It was a fraction of what the algorithm was worth, calculated to be just large enough that most people would take it and walk away. I did not take it. My attorney filed a formal IP dispute the next morning. What followed was 3 months of the most exhausting, isolating, and strangely clarifying experience of my life. I worked from home. I barely slept. My personal relationships suffered in ways I'm still repairing. My mother, who had never fully understood what I did for work, would call me every few days and ask if I was eating, and I would say yes, and then look at the cold cup of coffee on my desk that had been my only calorie since morning. But I was building something during those 3 months. Not code this time, a case. My attorney, working with a forensic software analyst, documented the full development history of the ClearPath algorithm. Commit logs, build timestamps, patent filing dates. The chain of custody was unambiguous. The algorithm that ClearPath Technologies was about to sell to a San Francisco PE firm for $340 million had been created entirely by me, before the company existed and licensed under terms the company had violated. The Austin Innovation Awards were scheduled for a Thursday in March. ClearPath Technologies was nominated for Most Innovative Startup of the Year. I knew from the industry newsletter that Daniel was planning to attend with Ryan and 2 board members. It was going to be a celebration, a capstone moment before the acquisition closed. The acquisition was scheduled to close the following Monday. My attorney contacted the acquiring firm's legal team on Wednesday afternoon. She sent a 40-page document detailing the IP dispute, including the recorded phone call, the email chain documenting my operational removal, the full patent history, and a clear legal argument that any acquisition that proceeded without resolving the license question would transfer a fundamentally encumbered asset. Acquiring firms do not like encumbered assets. I was in my car in the parking garage on Thursday night because my attorney had advised me not to be in the room, not for any legal reason, just because she knew me well enough to know that watching Daniel accept an award in front of 400 people for something I built might cause me to do something that felt satisfying in the moment and unhelpful in the long run. She was probably right, so I sat in the dark in my 7-year-old Honda and I watched the live stream. I watched Daniel take the stage in a suit that cost more than my first month's rent in Austin. I watched him smile at the room. I watched him begin his acceptance speech. My phone buzzed. A text from my attorney. The acquisition firm has issued a stop work notice. They've withdrawn from the Monday closing pending legal review. Their counsel will be reaching out to the board tonight. I set my phone face down on the passenger seat. Outside, through the concrete wall of the parking garage, the city was doing what cities do. Indifferent, continuous, lit up. I had spent 3 years building something in this city. I had given it everything. I had believed in it past the point where belief made sense. I allowed myself about 5 minutes to feel the full weight of it, the grief of it, honestly. Because it is grief. To love something you built and watch it become something you don't recognize. To have a partner you trusted choose money and credit over the actual work. To spend years in a room where you were the smartest person and be treated like the least important one. 5 minutes. Then I started the car. What happened over the following 6 weeks was, by any measure, complete. The acquiring firm's legal review concluded that ClearPath Technologies did not hold a clean license to its core IP. The board, facing the collapse of a $340 million deal, turned on Daniel with a speed that I'm told was breathtaking. Emails I had never seen were suddenly very relevant. Decisions he had made unilaterally, representations he had made to investors about the company's IP ownership structure. All of it came under scrutiny. The board voted to remove Daniel as CEO within 2 weeks of the awards ceremony. Ryan resigned the week after. My attorney negotiated directly with the board. The final agreement took another month to finalize. In the end, ClearPath Technologies entered into a new licensing agreement with me, a real one with real terms and real compensation that allowed the acquisition to proceed under a restructured deal. The final number was lower than $340 million, but not dramatically. My share under the new agreement was significantly more than $4.2 million. I signed the paperwork on a Tuesday morning in May in my attorney's office on the 8th floor of a building downtown, with a view of the same Austin skyline I used to see from the ClearPath conference room. Afterward, I went to a diner 2 blocks away and ordered a full breakfast: eggs, bacon, toast, orange juice, the whole thing. And I sat there alone and ate all of it. I texted my father a photo of the breakfast. Just the food, no explanation. He texted back, "That looks good, Anak. Did you eat yesterday?" I told him I had. This time it was true. I've thought a lot about what I would do differently. Honestly? Not much, in terms of the work. I would protect myself earlier. I would understand dilution clauses before I signed them. I would have clearer operational role protections in founding agreements. I would trust that quiet instinct that tells you something is wrong before you have evidence it's wrong. But I would build the same thing again. For the same people. The day the acquisition closed, I got an email from a woman in Chicago who said ClearPath had helped her and her husband finally understand their mortgage options well enough to buy their first home. She didn't know anything about patent disputes or acquisition deals. She just wanted me to know the tool had changed something real for her family. I read that email 4 times. Daniel sent me a message about 3 weeks after everything concluded. It was 2 sentences. He said he hoped I was well, and that he thought we'd both had lessons to learn from how things went. I didn't respond. Not out of bitterness. I had put most of the bitterness down by then. The way you put down a bag that's been cutting into your shoulder for too long. I just didn't have anything to say to him that would be honest and also kind, and I was done choosing between those 2 things. If you're watching this and you've ever had someone take what you built and put their name on it, you know the particular kind of silence that comes with that. It's not like regular anger. It's quieter than that, and it goes deeper, and it takes longer to move through than you expect it to. What I want you to know is that it does move. You do get to the other side. Document everything. Know what you own. And don't let anyone tell you that protecting what's yours is the same as being difficult. Where are you watching from? And have you ever had someone try to take credit for work that was entirely yours? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. I've had a lot of time to think about why things went the way they did. Not just what Daniel did, but why it worked on me for as long as it did. Why I stayed quiet through the title changes and the missed emails and a meeting I found out about only after it ended. Why I kept telling myself there was a version of this that didn't require me to burn anything down. I think the honest answer is that I confused loyalty with passivity. I thought staying was the same as being good. I thought if I just kept building, kept delivering, kept being the person who showed up and did the actual work, that would be enough. That merit would protect me. That the quality of what I'd made would speak for itself. It doesn't work that way. I know that now in a way I didn't before. What Daniel did had a logic to it, a cold, calculated logic. He found someone who was so focused on the work that she wasn't watching the walls. He understood that I cared more about ClearPath than about credit. And he used that. He moved slowly, incrementally, so that each individual step felt like something I could absorb and move past. The title shift. The dilution clause. Ryan's arrival. None of it, taken alone, felt like a thing worth blowing up a company over. Together it was everything. That's how this kind of thing works. It doesn't happen all at once. What saved me wasn't anger. It wasn't a plan I'd had all along. It was a habit. The quiet, almost unconscious habit of documentation that I'd started when something felt off. I didn't know exactly what I was saving those emails for. I didn't have a strategy. I just knew, somewhere in the part of me that was still paying attention, that I might need a record of what was real. That instinct, small, unglamorous, not dramatic at all, turned out to be the most important thing I did. I think about that a lot when people ask me what the lesson is. Because the lesson isn't fight back. It's not never trust anyone. It's something quieter than that. It's pay attention to what you know, document what's real, understand what you own, not just financially, but in terms of your own work, your own contributions, the things you created that exist in the world because of you. Know those things clearly. Because when someone tries to rewrite the story of what happened, the only thing that holds is evidence. The other thing I'd say is this. Protecting yourself is not the same as being selfish. I spent years believing that asserting my own interests would make me difficult, would damage relationships, would make me the kind of person who couldn't be trusted. What I eventually understood is that the person who was actually untrustworthy was the one who had been quietly rewriting our founding agreement from the inside. My job was never to make that easier by staying silent. Maya built something real. She did it for real reasons, for real people. And when it came down to it, the work held up. Not because of luck, but because she had done it right, documented it honestly, and refused a buyout that wasn't fair, even when taking it would have been the easier path. That integrity, maintained under real pressure, is what made everything else possible. Your work is yours. Know what that means. Hold on to it.